The Confessions of Saint Augustine, Book 5, Chapter 10. You recovered me then of that sickness and healed the son of your handmaid for the time in body, that he might live, for you to bestow upon him a better and more abiding health. And even then, at Rome, I joined myself to those deceiving and deceived holy ones, not with their disciples only, of which number was he in whose house I had fallen sick and recovered, but also with those whom they call the elect. For I still thought that it was not we that sinned, but that I know not what other nature sinned in us. And it delighted my pride to be free from blame, and when I had done any evil, not to confess I had done any, that you might heal my soul because it had sinned against you. But I loved to excuse it, and to accuse I know not what other thing, which was with me, but which I was not. But in truth I was wholly I, and mine impiety had divided me against myself. And that sin was the more incurable, whereby I did not judge myself a sinner, and execrable iniquity it was that I had rather have you, O God Almighty, to be overcome in me to my destruction, than myself of you to salvation. Not as yet then had you set a watch before my mouth, and a door of safekeeping around my lips, that my heart might not turn aside to wicked speeches, to make excuses of sins with men that work iniquity, and therefore was I still united with their elect. But now despairing to make proficiency in that false doctrine, even those things with which, if I should find no better, I had resolved to rest contented, I now held more laxly and carelessly. For there half arose a thought in me that those philosophers, whom they call academics, were wiser than the rest, for that they held men ought to doubt everything, and lay down that no truth can be comprehended by man. For so, not then understanding even their meaning, I also was clearly convinced that they thought as they are commonly reported. Yet did I freely and openly discourage that host of mine from that overconfidence which I perceived him to have in those fables, which the books of Manichaeus are full of. Yet I lived in more familiar friendship with them than with others who were not of this heresy. Nor did I maintain it with my ancient eagerness. Still my intimacy with that sect, Rome secretly harboring many of them, made me slower to seek any other way, especially since I despaired of finding the truth from which they had turned me aside. In your church, O Lord of heaven and earth, Creator of all things visible and invisible, and it seemed to me very unseemly to believe you to have the shape of human flesh and to be bounded by the bodily lineaments of our members. And because when I wished to think on my God, I knew not what to think of, but a mass of bodies, for what was not such did not seem to me to be anything. This was the greatest and almost only because of my inevitable error. For hence I believed evil also to be some such kind of substance, and to have its own form and hideous bulk, whether gross, which they called earth, or thin and subtile, like the body of the air, which they imagined to be some malignant mind, creeping through that earth. And because a piety such as it was constrained me to believe that the good God never created any evil nature, I conceived two masses, contrary to one another, both unbounded, but the evil narrower, the good more expansive. And from this pestilent beginning, the other sacrilegious conceits followed on me. For when my mind endeavored to recur to the Catholic faith, I was driven back, since that was not the Catholic faith which I thought to be so. And I seemed to myself more reverential, if I believed of you, my God, to whom your mercies confess out of my mouth, as unbounded, at least on other sides, although on that one where the mass of evil was opposed to you, I was constrained to confess you bounded. That if on all sides I should imagine you to be bounded by the form of a human body, and it seemed to me better to believe you to have created no evil, which to me ignorant seemed not some only, but a bodily substance, because I could not conceive of mind unless as a subtle body, and that diffused in definite spaces, than to believe the nature of evil, such as I conceived it, could come from you. Ye, and our Saviour himself, the only begotten, I believed to have been reached forth, as it were, for our salvation, out of the mass of your most lucid substance, so as to believe nothing of him, but what I could imagine in my vanity. His nature then, being such, I thought could not be born of the Virgin Mary without being mingled with the flesh, and how that which I had so figured to myself could be mingled and not defiled, I saw not. I feared therefore to believe him born in the flesh, lest I should be forced to believe him defiled by the flesh. Now will your spiritual ones mildly and lovingly smile upon me, if they shall read these my confessions. Yet such was I.